Mr. Berger,
Here.
Ms. Capabianco.
Here.
Mr. Corey,
Here.
Mr. Predis,
Here.
Mr. Nicolito.
Yep.
Ms. Papiano. Here. Ms. Hona here, Mr. Kisco.
Here.
Ms. Richardson. Here. Ms. Toder.
Here.
Mayor Carbone. Mr. Barlow. No. Here. Ms. Ferguson. Here. Ms. Klimaszewski. Ms. Lubowski. Yep. Ms. Schulte.
Here.
Okay.
Laura's going to be online.
Okay.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I think
All those in favor?
Johnny here.
Okay, discussion on budget 2022, 2023. Where we left the other night, we were looking at the proposed additions from the superintendent. There was questions on the coaches specifically. So what I wanted to propose to the board is to consider keeping the coaches in the grant until we can better assess the coaching positions. So the positions will still exist, they'll just continue to go through the grant. If you want to straw poll on that item before we open the floor. Sue actually has some information she's passing out.
And we also have the budget positions that were discussed the other day with each section taken out, and one of the sections has the coaches taken out of the increase, and that would be page 511. So that would get us down to 5.49%. So that's the one that says general budget position proposal all. Those were the additional positions that we talked about at the last meeting. And then page 5 just gives you a synopsis of that.
Yeah, do you want to?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I tried to sum it up for you just briefly. The first paragraph kind of just lists out the major responsibilities of an instructional coach. So they're in classrooms, modeling lessons for teachers, and then releasing responsibility to the teacher and co-teaching until the teacher feels comfortable. Teachers go through coaching cycles. They meet with grade level teams, with departments on a regular basis to look at student data, to see, where are the weaknesses, where are the strengths, what can we do? How can we tweak our instruction? They analyze that data, they help with resource gathering. If their teachers feel that they need a new resource to strengthen what they're doing, the coaches gather that information. But really the primary responsibility is to work with teachers who are interested in improving their practice or trying something new. The other point, if I could just make, which is I think is very important, is that an instructional coach is a teacher. Coach is not an administrator, and that's a critical point because they're not evaluating teachers. So the teachers have an ability to be very honest, to be very vulnerable about what they think their needs might be with a coach. But it's a different relationship than a teacher has with an administrator.
I'll put myself, but I'm gonna agree with what we brought up, only because I talked to others afterwards, I was the opposite.
You have to talk louder.
I was thinking we'd leave coaches general budget and then paras and grants, but after talking to people, I'm thinking we should take time. I would like to take time to just think about what they do, how they do it. If it's worthy next year, move them in.
Say keep them in grants.
Right.
Yes.
This complete number of coaches that you see, this is the first year that we've had all, of them. So just to give you some perspective. And if we have them in the grant, we have the opportunity to have them another year.
Yeah, I think that's the important piece. We wouldn't be losing these positions. They would just stay in the grant for next year. And then we can do a more thorough analysis of better, so that we all have a better understanding of their role in the school.
And about what kind of difference is actually.
Talk to Administration, central office, administration in the good. To see throughout the next year, we would have time to do that full analysis. Not that we're evaluating them, but to get a better understanding of.
Their schedules are like, types of things. Right, workload.
Questions about that specific item? Okay, so we'll move that back into grant. The next item that was brought up was the paraprofessionals. For supports.
So you have a number of different scenarios. Most of the pages have the 33 paraprofessionals, which Lynn was able to work into the budget. Page 8 of 11 has a cut to them, all 33 of them. Page 10 of 11 has 14 paraprofessionals, and that would focus in on the kinder program. And then page 11 of 11 has 0.
Can you explain that one more time, please? If you don't mind me asking.
Sure, so most of the pages have the 33 paraprofessionals at the very bottom of the page. So you can see what the cost is, okay? It's that 656, okay? And then on page 8 of 11, they're totally cut, all of them, all 33. And then on page 10 of 11, there's 14 paraprofessionals, so you can see the comparative cost. And then on page 11 of 11, there are no paraprofessionals at all.
On page 5 of 11, if keeping the coaches in the grant, this looks like kind of a summary of what we're talking about and how we want to proceed, I think. Right, page 5 of 11?
That's right, but
Our sense from our last meeting.
Yes. Okay, just wanted to clarify. And then we have a lot of administrators here, and I'm wondering if they were here to speak on budget or policy. I don't know if it's something.
Policy. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just want to double check before we make any drastic changes. Nikki's next.
I'm sorry, Nikki first, then Gary.
I think so. The paraprofessionals, which Jess, I think was a great idea, was added because there's concern around the amount of adults to the amount of children in the K-3, right? So right now it's like 1 adult to 20 kids. So the idea of the paraprofessionals was to help kind of reduce that, right? My question is this the right way to do that? Because we asked for teachers, and I think you kind of came back and said there's really not space. What is another way, or is paraprofessionals the right way to address the class size?
Well, look, a couple of different things, right? So we have more mental health professionals than we've ever had before. We have more registered behavior techs. We have these certified behaviorists. We have behavior interns. So we have a variety of different folks who can talk and work with and model this behavioral practices. But in terms of the instructional piece of it, then you're looking at paras or registered behavior techs, kind of living in both of those worlds.
And are they modeling the behavior to teachers and how to respond? Are they directly helping with the kids that are causing the behavior issues?
It depends on what the role is. So your behaviorists and your behavior interns are going to actually train the staff and say, here's some strategies. Tell me what the issue is, or I'll come in and see what the situation is. And here's some strategies with those particular students that you think you're having trouble with. And then registered behavior techs are working with individuals or groups of students so that they really can help those students grow their skills and learn so that they can cope better on a daily basis.
I'm in support of whatever needs to be done to reduce the class sizes.
Was that, I wasn't sure if you would ask that or not, but we will discuss whether we need 33 or not, and evaluate that. You'll evaluate that over the next couple months, or are you gonna come back and say, well, we think we only need 23, or are we gonna leave it in there and then, adjust accordingly later? Just curious.
Sure, elementary's a little harder because we kind of know as the kids stay with us, the students that we're gonna get, but it's harder at kindergarten and first grade because we have a lot of flexibility and we do have mobility throughout the district. But kinder, you never know what that combination is gonna be. So that's why it really does help to target that grade level. Years ago, we actually had Paris in kinder and it was helpful. Kathy was stressing the other day. I know Sue remembers that. I remember a time when we had Paris when I was at Forbes at the kinder level. I know when speaking with some of the principals, they were saying the registered behavior techs are very, very helpful in terms of making sure we have those behavioral supports at those levels, especially after COVID when students really weren't in school and they didn't have a lot of structure and it was very difficult as they were making the transition. Yeah, many of those students may not have gone to pre-K either.
So you think we should leave where it is, which I'm in favor of, don't get me wrong, I just want to make sure that that might be the number we're going. We're not.
Right, it's certainly we could use the support. It would be wonderful to have that. Whatever number the board decides, whether it's the 14 or the 33.
Just and then just.
I mean, the 33 was the number that I came up with just based on the approximate value of what coaches, well, if you were to take the coaches out and put in paras, how many paras you obviously have that same amount of money. So, I mean, it's kind of a random number. Like, do you think that's enough? Because we're going to say 33, you're going to say 35. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, just since it's not, it wasn't a scientific process coming to that number.
Right, and I think that if we're really looking at kinder and we're saying that's really where we need to target, I think that helps. At elementary, it's always nice to have extra hands in there.
And we have about 32 sections across both
primary
primary schools with K and 1. So
Is it, how many, because
K
I,
and 1.
28, I came up with 28,
I'm
is
just,
that right?
I'm just
Yeah, well,
guessing,
that, I mean,
you
that
know.
was my thought was, even if we could just focus on kindergarten and first grade, our littlest learners who, it's always a great thing to have a second adult in there to support them, and that would be 28. Not that cutting 5 is a big deal, but I would hate to see us only go with 14 if we really need 28.
We know how it goes, right? I mean, just because we're asking for this figure doesn't mean we're going to get it. So.
John and then Sue.
Back to kindergarten, it's always hard to get a number for kindergarten before they actually show up after the first few days, in fact, of kindergarten. Anything from the kindergarten fair on Saturday, wonderful event, by the way, with the chance to be there. Any new projection from that or not?
We are having more students register than ever before. However, it always increases in July and August, in spite of whatever we do. So we do have to make sure that we have that estimate in there, and it's a placeholder. And then in middle of August, we're really looking at our numbers again.
Okay, so shoot high rather than low would be the way to deal with kindergarten potential.
And that's what we do even in our sections, yes.
I think it sounds like a great plan, but how is this gonna help, if we can, the rest of the grades as far as supports in the classroom? Do we have, would we be able to take whatever we have in sports for K through 1 now, or I was thinking we would be able to utilize some of these positions for other grade levels across all the grades. Instead of just, unless I don't know, maybe I misunderstood. Was that your point, Jess?
I mean, my, no, when I just looked at how much we were looking to spend on the coaches, which.
You came up with the
I
33,
came up
right?
with that number and I was
Yeah.
like, hey, it kind of works out. This would be a good supplemental number to that K through 3, and that's the age group. I think that's the hardest to manage with those class sizes.
Yep,
So that was why I suggested that, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think in actuality, you may have a kindergarten classroom that has 2 paras in it already because of the student needs in that classroom, and maybe a third body wouldn't be helpful. So you may have somebody else, you know,
excess.
yeah,
to
where,
move around.
how it ends up working out in reality is probably not gonna be that clean.
Okay, we would have the flexibility to move those positions
Right.
throughout the district, right? Okay.
As needed, yep, or even if we kept them at elementary.
Right.
Right, and in all likelihood,
It's
they
nowhere
would
near
be,
enough anyway.
right, we're gonna have at the elementary level, and then at the secondary level, if you're needing supports, then you're starting to look at those registered behavior types.
Right.
Which makes sense.
And the interventionists as well, right? That would, the interventionists, do they get involved at the secondary level?
Yes, we have
Right.
interventionists at every level now, which is really nice, because before we did not have them at secondary.
Any other questions on those positions? The other thing I wanted to bring up, is there any desire to split the custodians over a 2-year to add 4 for next year and 4 the following year? Or do everyone want to propose 8 in year 1?
My take on it would be to put all the positions in the budget proposal that we're gonna send to the city. And because you always kind of have to make some assumption that you might have to make a decision later. I don't like shooting ourselves in the foot by cutting our own budget, but I think, if/when it's returned to us with a lower number than we're requesting, one of the first places I would probably look would be to say maybe we only add a handful of custodians instead of trying to add all. So I would say, to me, that would be one of the first places to pare back the budget if we need to. But I would be interested in submitting it with all of them at the start and go from there.
I mean,
Thoughts on that?
I was just calculating to see how much it's gonna move the growth rate, unless you already said, yeah, it's 100 or,
0.5%.
yeah.
Take it down to 5. Just keeping in mind that this is operating on.
Right, do we know what the growth rate is with the capital? I know we can't revise our capital plan, but I know there was some shifts in the next year because of,
That won't be considered when they look at it. They're gonna look at what our submitted capital is. Or submitted operational.
so are we factoring in the 7 million or the 600,000 post grants?
For capital,
Yes.
for capital, it's our original December submission, and then when we go for our meeting, we'll tell them that we got grants for those amounts.
Okay, so we would add in the 7 million, the pre-grant number?
Right.
For next year,
But
okay,
when it comes out, it's going to be what our original proposal was until we go there on April 26th to talk to them about the grant money we received.
okay. So that's like 7,139,000. And then we have our technology capital of 717,000. Right, am I thinking about this right? So then that would be almost 8 million. In addition to the, 2.2 million for general budget.
Knowing that they already approved the 8.
I don't think they approved the 8.
Will be submitted.
They,
Yeah,
They
I don't think they
received
approved
They
it.
received that.
I think we'd all be dancing a little. If that was the case.
They acknowledge it.
Right, they received the email, yeah.
the last few pages of the packet, the 11 pages gives you what is in grant going back into grant and then funding the new positions. Only, so 9 of 11 is new positions only, all of those that are proposed, including the paraprofessionals, the 33 paraprofessionals at the bottom. Then page 10 of 11 is what was proposed the other night with 4 custodial positions, 14 paras, and you start to see the difference in the percentage that we would propose to the city. And that last page is the proposals of the new positions with 4 new custodians, no paras. So it just kind of gives you that range. You can see what the differences are.
Does anyone want to put forward a motion to approve any of these sheets? And each one of these provides, all of the scenarios we've discussed in our previous meetings. If somebody wants to entertain a motion to approve one of these sheets in totality.
Sorry, I have
Go
one
ahead,
question
go ahead, Nikki.
before we go to a motion.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still calculating. I just had one question on in the actual budget that we just received last Wednesday. I had a question, detailed question, so I apologize for bringing us back there, but on page 48 of 83, it was the one printed 323. I noticed that the Thrive program didn't have anything in the funding for 2023, and I was just curious if we're removing that program from Torrington, because I felt like that was an initiative in the budget last year.
It was, and Laura can speak to that better, but we do have a Thrive program at local Wetmore. We have the Voices program at Torrington. Do you want to add something, Laura?
You're muted.
There you go. We still can't hear you, Laura.
Sorry, you guys. Okay, so as I said before, every year when we are planning, we look at the needs of the kids. And so it just so happens, perhaps because of the behavioral interventions that we have in place, that we do not have the needs for 2 Thrive programs. So we just have the 1 Thrive program for this coming year. However, we do have the need for 3 Voices programs. So more autistic children, less behavioral children. So, we continue still a certified special ed teacher, so there's no change. But it's just that particular program. We don't have a second one running.
So as a follow-up then, so if kids were identified at Torrington, would they go to the Thrive program at local or no?
Yes, so we just so happen to have, not too many, we have our 1 middle school, 1 high school. A lot of districts have more than 1. And so you go where the program is in the district. So in that case, we only have 1 Thrive program and they would go to Vogel.
I was just gonna ask, I was just gonna ask if we know the amount of students that this budget supports with 1 Thrive program K through 3. Like, I don't know how many students the one program at Vogel supports?
Yeah, so usually with my programs, if you start getting over 10 kids in a program in self-contained, it's really getting too high. But we are starting with 5 children in the Thrive program. So, I'm pretty confident that we don't need 2 programs. We never know what's going to happen over the summer. We could have, a lot of children move out. We can have other children move in. So, it's always a shifting game if I need to. But I don't foresee any reason why we would need more staff. It may be shifting and we would take care of it.
Sorry.
So is there any of the options that someone would like to propose as the Board of Ed submitted budget?
Did you have a question first? Or was I-
No, I was commenting on that.
Yeah, so I will at this time, and I'm looking at page 5 in this packet, but at this time would move the Board of Education budget in the amount of $81,153,989 for general budget, which would be the general budget proposal, leaving the coach positions in the grants, adding the positions that are listed on the sheet that's in front of you, again, page 5.
Want to second that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Glenn, are you in favor or opposed to this one?
My favorite.
In favor? Don't worry, we'll be back at this at length in May or 2. Okay, I get a motion to adjourn.
So.
In favor? Aye. Choose. Approval of the agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public participation. Members of the public and staff may bring to the committee's attention information, ideas, or matters of concern related to all the duties and responsibilities of this committee. This committee will not allow comments regarding specific staff members or personal grievances. The time for individual remarks will be apportioned according to the number of speakers and will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker unless extended by the chair. Mary Ann Buchanan.
Thank you. I'm going to read this letter and then provide copies to you now. Dear Mrs. Capabianca, as president of the Torrington Public Schools Administrators Association, representing 21 administrators across the district, I'm addressing you as chair of the Torrington Board of Education to express great concern for the lack of respect, and not just last week's meeting, yet a tone that has occurred on more than one occasion over the past 18 months. The behaviors demonstrated are a direct violation of the Board of Ed Policy 1009. Our code of ethics, where the first sentence clearly states, quote, "The success of every school system depends on an effective working relationship between the Board of Education and Superintendent of Schools," unquote. There are a dozen bullets following that statement, and I wish to highlight 4 of them. Number 5. Board members and the superintendent will always carry out their respective roles with the highest levels of professionalism, honesty, and integrity. Number 8, board members adhere to the principle that they shall confine the board's role to policymaking, planning, and appraisal, while the superintendent shall implement the board's policy. Number 9, board members and the superintendent recognize that they serve as a part of an educational team with mutual respect, trust, civility, and a regard for each other's respective roles and responsibilities. Number 11, board members and superintendent practice and promote ethical behavior in the boardroom as a model for all district employees, unquote.
We have not witnessed members of the board modeling professionalism, ethical behavior, or even showing respect for our superintendent and other administrators. When an administrator provides information in which members disagree, the administrator's valid input is curtly dismissed. As a district, we have school-wide expectations of respect, responsibility, and safety, and believe this starts with the adults modeling these expectations. Students, staff, and community members watch our Board of Ed meetings. What is absent? Respect. At the March 23rd meeting, a board member verbally attacked our superintendent stating, quote, "It starts at the top," unquote. Yes, it does. We agree with that statement, and the entity, the Board of Education, is the top of our school district. The attacks made to staff members and frankly towards fellow board members in this public forum are more divisive than student offenses and do great harm. Each day, our staff, teachers, and administrators have the charge of addressing behaviors that may rise to the level of bullying. It is a daunting task and taken seriously. The legal definition of bullying is outlined in our Board of Ed policy 5010. A board member recently expressed concern for the quote, "arm waving bullying behavior," unquote, of another board member. At the highest level as the board of our district, bullying needs to stop. As a team of administrators, we find the need to remind our board of its responsibilities clearly outlined by CABE, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. Quote, "School boards derive their power and authority from state laws and regulations. School boards are not responsible for the day-to-day management of the school district. That job is left to the professional educators hired by the school board. The school board delegates district administration and daily operations to the superintendent," unquote. Our roles, yours and ours, are stressful and challenging enough. We need to come together to honor and support the work that is being done. Seek to understand without intimidating us for sharing. Let us start anew tonight and not go back to these destructive ways a week, a month, or a year from now. Respectfully, on behalf of the entire Torrington Public Schools Administrators Association. Thank you for listening. And providing comments.
Carrie Cassidy.
Carrie Cassidy, 9 Bradford Avenue. I fully concur with Marion Buchanan's statement. I'm here to obviously discuss the yonder policy that is going to be discussed tonight. I ask that as you consider the policy, that you consider the number of what ifs as you draft your policy. What if students choose not to use the couch? What if students choose to put in a dummy phone and still utilize their cell phones at a later time throughout the day? I can't expect my teachers to follow a policy that doesn't support them. So I really need you to put together a policy that everyone in the district can follow and enforce, because if it's not enforceable, we can't do anything about this policy. Cell phones are certainly an issue. They are not the only issue our schools are facing. Rather, they are a symptom of a much larger issue in our schools. But starting with the cell phones, I hope, is a help. April vacation is fast approaching. Our behaviors, particularly at the middle school, increased drastically after April vacation. So if it is at all possible to draft a policy, have it enforceable so that we can start using these pouches before the end of the school year, I feel, as well as many of the teachers in the building feel, that we can de-escalate some of the behaviors when they no longer have access to cell phones to continue spreading information throughout the building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather McCoy.
Good evening, Heather McCoy, 11 Timberlake Court. I lived in Torrington for almost 17 years. My son Jack is a freshman at Torrington High School, and he spoke to you at the budget committee meeting on March 14th. I feel compelled to speak regarding a number of things that came to light at the meetings last week. We learned that while the board conducted task forces, this public outreach should have happened months ago, before the board voted to purchase yonder pouches. We learned most of the board has now admitted that at the time they voted, they had no idea how high school students actually use their cell phones every day for numerous educational purposes. We learned that our teens use their phones to study for quizzes and tests, practice foreign languages, read assigned books, photograph lab work, make appointments with guidance counselors, communicate with peers, coaches, and parents regarding school activities, and much more. Incredibly, despite this testimony, several board members still refuse to even acknowledge the fact that cell phones do serve some legitimate educational purposes. We learned that in an effort to defend your vote for yonder pouches, you were trying to blame everyone but yourselves for what has gone wrong. You're blaming the administrators for not being able to rush through and implementing your scheme. You're blaming the public for not speaking up sooner. We keep hearing that you've been discussing cell phones for years and yonder pouches since September. And you ask us, where have we been? Why are we speaking up now? Our outrage is too little, too late, I believe the quote in the paper said. These comments are offensive. While you may have discussed cell phone issues over the years in various contexts, you never publicly mentioned the yonder pouches until mid-January. Following February 23rd, I reviewed the board's online sources for the last 7 months. The agendas, the minutes, the videos. We, the public, didn't miss anything. You kept us in the dark. You kept it off your agendas and glossed over it in your minutes. You even told the newspaper on January 26th that you were only researching yonder pouches and that we would all be consulted before a decision was made. That wasn't true. After watching a video of the January Budget Committee meeting, it became clear that certain members of the board were going to vote for yonder pouches. The public meeting on February 23rd was a farce. The board had already made its decision, and you had no intention of truly involving the community. We learned that the board has not really articulated any legitimate reasons for locking up cell phones all day at the high school. You baselessly claim that everyone violates the cell phone policy, and then state that there were only 55 cell phone violations at the high school in the third quarter, meaning that approximately 900 students managed to follow the rules. We hear you say that children are committing suicide because of cell phones, and our kids are addicted to their phones like heroin. I mean, my gosh, if this board is truly concerned about teen suicide and addiction, I sure hope you'd be using these grant funds for something to actually implement some mental health initiatives, not buying yonder pouches. We hear vague references to kids that have been expelled for abusing cell phones. While I'm sure you've heard some pretty disturbing things, this begs the question as to whether the board made this vote because of what a few troubled teens have done to warrant expulsion, conduct that was likely criminal. It seems short-sighted and unfair for the board to punish an entire school for the actions of a few. I have no real hope or delusion that anything I or anyone says tonight will change the board's decision. However, I do hope some things will change. I hope that in the future, you will communicate the major issues that you are considering before you identify them as an action for vote. I hope that when administrators, teachers, parents, and students beg you to listen to us, that you pause, reflect, and do just that. Mostly, I hope that you will remember that while we appreciate the time you all put into this board, we are angry and disheartened. Your actions over the last few months have eroded our trust, and that's not easy to regain. Thank you.
Is there anyone online or? No? I have one.
Nobody online.
There is someone online?
No.
Okay,
Nope, nobody, sorry.
thank you.
That's Ally.
Oh, thank you, Alan. One I need to read in. My name is Stephen Fedor, and I have been a high school mathematics teacher for 30 years at New Britain High School. I'm a lifelong Torrington resident who had 2 daughters graduate from THS in 2015 and 2018. I fully support the Board of Education, their quest to enhance learning in the classroom by eliminating the distractions of cell phones in our schools. As a parent, the single largest distraction I have in my day is cell phones. It is our job as educators or parents to protect our students and children from this addiction. If you do not believe it is an addiction, check the usage of daily screen time that your child is on their phone. I did a math lesson on it with my students, and the mean time was 11.5 hours per day. The pouches will benefit the whole school system. There will be less bullying, fights, he said, she said, arguments, cheating with airdrops. Students will benefit from not having to deal with the distraction and burden the phone brings them. They will have 6.5 hours of peace where they can focus just on school and have real conversations with their classmates and teachers. Change is difficult at first, but we will adapt. Our job is to give our children the best education we can, and this is a step in the right direction. I applaud the BOE for having the guts to do this. I will give that to. Okay. The purpose of this special meeting is to draft a policy for our yonder pouches that board has already voted on to move forward with. The implementation is up to administration. We just draft the policy, not just, we draft the policy with the support of collaboration with. Oh, okay, discussion with Yonder, sorry. I have a couple people from Yonder. Who would like to go first?
Is that addressed to the Yonder team?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm happy to say a few words and then I might kick it over to Benji. My name is Graham Degoni. I'm founder and CEO of Yonder. I'm happy to provide, answer any questions that might pop up. I've listened to all the letters that I've written and understand I think the opinions both for and against. I think what might be helpful for you guys to understand is that, this is something Yonder's been doing for a long time. We've been around for 8 years. We work with over 1,200 schools. We have a large presence in the US, in Europe, and Australia. And hearing feedback from the community and from administrators about concerns about how are they going to make their school phone free, we understand. We understand that it's a culture change. We understand that phones are deeply integrated into people's daily life, especially young people's. But more than most people, I think we also have day-to-day observation of the problems that brings. And we've grown as a company through the years, responding to requests from teachers, principals, district leaders who are seeing the problems at different points in times and looking for a solution. So Yonder, we view ourselves as a facilitator. We're here to help the administration in making a phone-free environment for their students. And a key part of the policy is understanding that we think that it's important that there is student buy-in and that students have possession of their phones, although it's in a Yonder pouch for the day. But we're really here to support a school policy. And when we go into a new school, our staff shows up on the ground. We support on the ground. We help the school understand logistically at their school, how is this going to work for them? What staff requirements do they need to get it up and running? And like any culture change or new policy change, I think it's important to understand that, of course, the first week, is there going to be some pushback as kids are adjusting to a new program? Of course there is. But what we hear from our school partners over time is that once it's integrated into the school culture, it becomes just like everything else. It's something students do every day. And what we hear from parents on the other side is that over time, they notice that their kid becomes less and less attached to their phone. It starts to gravitate away from their body. And when they're home, they leave it on the counter rather than their hand all the time. And from our perspective, I think if you're trying to teach digital citizenship or how students can navigate a really tricky environment with social media, our perspective is that the best way to teach is to create space for them to experience what it's like to not be distracted all day and not have the distractions of social media. So that's what we aim for and we try to facilitate as a company. Our team is composed mostly of former educators. So when we send people into schools, these are people with education backgrounds, a lot of whom started out as deans of schools who used Yonder and then joined our team. So we're well versed in what goes on in the school and we take pride in showing up and supporting administrators.
Thank you. Anyone else from Yonder?
Hi, I'm Benji. I was at the last meeting. Thank you all for hosting us again. I just wanted to touch on one thing in particular. That first letter highlighted what ifs around use cases for cell phones during instruction. We just had a school in Australia last week who talked to us about the fact that the science teacher wanted students to use their phones to record a frog dissection. We thought that was a reasonable, use case for students to be able to use their phones for an educational purpose. So of course, we start out with the concept and the policy that Torrington Middle School will be phone free, right? But of course, if there are specific use cases where the phones can really be helpful during a lesson, a lot of our school partners have, an unlocking device that the department chairs might each have one, and a teacher can go and check that base out for the day to do something like use Google Translate or use Maps, something like that. With the advent of, almost every school that we've talked to in the country being one-to-one with laptops, the list of positives for students to have unfettered access to their phones is decreasing quite rapidly because a lot of what might have helped, a student on a phone before, they can now do on their computers.
Thank you. See, there's,
Do you have any questions first? If there were any questions.
is there anyone else from Yonder? No? Okay. Any questions from any board members? Committee members first. Committee members first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nobody has.
Gary?
I don't know who would answer this, but I know Matt was up here. It's Gary. I reached out to you in 2019. That was when we started communication. And again, I don't know you folks, but I followed the cell phone practice for 5 years now. This is why we started talking about it today. I think the administrators were most worried in our last meeting about being able to roll this out and how fast it would, how long it would take and how fast you could react and what your protocols are. So if you could, I don't know who it would be, maybe it's Matt, maybe it's Benji, who could explain to the administrators in the room how much notice you typically need, how fast it rolls out, and how long your typical install and walk away timeframe is, and give an example of the schools you just completed. You mentioned Chicopee before, but you'll go through some of the schools that you've dealt with in the past year or two, some of the largest and some of the smallest, and give them an idea of what the day-to-day is like. Because
Sure.
God.
Yeah, I can take that. When a school contacts us and is interested in implementing Yonder, we usually go through a process similar to what we've done with you all, which is get buy-in, make sure that all staff in the school are aware of what Yonder is and how it works. But we also spend time with students. So Matt on our team has been to both the middle school and the high school, but the plan is that next week, Thursday and Friday, he will be visiting the schools again, probably with a focus on the middle school, it sounds like, but sitting down with student leaders and getting their insights and opinions about Yonder as well and how it will work. Once the school is ready to move forward, we usually have about a 3 to 5 week runway up until we're actually on campus doing the physical implementation. In terms of the process during arrival and dismissal, we spend a couple of days doing a standard practice that we call pouch assignment and then pouch check. On the first day, we're getting every student their pouch. We have first period teachers write the student's first and last name on their pouch. So we have kind of an accountability system just with the student's name. And then the next morning we do a pouch check. So we will check that every student is consistently bringing their pouch back to school and that the pouch is also in good condition. On average, we see that 5% of students are non-compliant, meaning that they're caught on their phone or maybe have tampered with their pouch. That's across, the average school in the US that we work with. Once Yonder is up and running, it adds no time to the arrival or dismissal process. In fact, we've heard from a lot of educators that they've never seen their school dismiss so fast because students are not milling around on their phones or checking the latest TikTok. They're getting to the exits to unlock their pouch. And again, we've been simultaneously working with a lot of the major comedians and biggest musical performers in the world. So we have actually implemented Yonder in venues as large as 20,000 people. And we hear the same feedback from venue management. They've never seen their space exit more quickly.
What types of schools? I'm trying to, get the administrators to understand where you've been. Because that's
Sure.
like, can you pull it
Yeah,
off?
about 75% of our school partners are public schools in major districts. So we are an approved vendor of the New York City Department of Education, the School District of Philadelphia, Boston Public Schools. Clark County School District is our fastest growing district. That's in Las Vegas. It's the 5th largest district in the country. This past week, we implemented Yonder at a 1,500 student middle school, and we saw 99% compliance. So we have a lot of experiences in large schools, large being, 1,000 plus your size, in most of the major school districts in the country.
Anyone else? Okay.
Oh.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Do you often run into situations with students with using earbuds and Apple Watches? Does that replace the cell phones, or is it not as much of an issue?
That's a great question. One of our first steps while we're assigning pouches to students and checking their pouches and getting them in that routine is to have them turn their phones completely off. We want them to save battery so that they have full battery, at 3 o'clock when they dismiss. But it's also that we eliminate or really mitigate as much as possible all distractions that might come from spam calls or social media updates, vibrations or noises coming from their phone. What we see in some of the larger school districts like Philadelphia, for example, is that a lot of the kids have wearable tech, right? And even though the phone is turned off, maybe they have a later generation Apple Watch, where they might be able to do some things like check out apps or even send text messages if the family pays for an extra data plan. That's one of the things Matt will look for next week is just kind of observing arrival and dismissal, walk in the halls, with the administrators a little bit, just to get a sense for how much wearable tech we're actually seeing. If it's only a handful of students that have their AirPods in during the day, that's really a simple, hey, please take those off. Those should be off and away, while we're on campus rolling out Yonder. If Matt sees that it's, a critical mass of students that have AirPods in and walking around, we might do something where we provide all extra large pouches to the middle school. And that might be something the administration wants to do to take that extra step where students can put their, Apple Watch or their AirPods in the pouch along with the phone. So that's kind of that next layer that we can jump to if we see it being a real issue.
What is Matt's role? Because I was there at the school with, I don't know, Nikki, I think, and the administration at the middle school. But if you explain to the administration and to the public, of course, what Matt's role will be.
I guess I can take that one if that's all right.
All
So
right,
I'm the partnerships lead in New England. So essentially my job is to really build and create relationships with administration, the board, but most importantly, students and parents, right? Because at the end of the day, this is tough for admin. It's tough for the people implementing the program. But at the end of the day, your students are really going through it. So I really want to hear the concerns from your students. I want them to be able to get out any kind of negative energy that they might have before the implementation, because there's always going to be a student who doesn't want to put their phone in the pouch, and their reaction to that can vary quite heavily. But I will say there's always a reason why a student does not want to put the phone in the pouch. Those reasons are 9 times out of 10, very legitimate. And I want to create easy solutions to complex problems. So I will be there the entire Thursday and Friday to really be able to start building relationships with everybody I can. I want to talk to as many people as I can. And I just really appreciate you guys having me there. So thank you so much.
I just, one more thing, because it was a question at the last meeting. Matt, I don't know who did chickpea, I'm reading about chickpea mass in the paper, but typically what happens in the morning? Who is at the door? How do they greet? And how do you get through the first couple of weeks and prepare everybody for when you leave? And again, I'm not ran to tell everybody what he said to me about you staying till it's done, but, or whatever it takes, but what is the step in the morning, and who does best at greeting kids in the morning? What's the way to make it the smoothest?
So that will be a lot of my job come Thursday and Friday, is to really like watch your guys' arrival and dismissal, and to figure out how Yonder can be administered and by far the most seamless way possible. So, you know, at the middle school, again, I don't want to speak too heavily on what the implementation would look like, because I really want to make sure that, you know, your community, especially the administrators, are, you know, all on board on it, right? But the way that I envision it is just simply, as students come in the morning, they will be greeted, asked to turn their phone off, and then they will then insert their phone into the pouch. For the first week, we will have a team there assisting as needed. Our biggest goal is to train you all up, so that way, by the time we leave, you all feel comfortable. And a huge part of my job is being available, right, to help you all when, you know, the eventual kink in the road might happen. You know, I'm there to support you guys, right? I want to make you guys, I want to give you all the skills so that way you can do this on a day-to-day, year-to-year basis, right? I feel very confident that you all can do this. And again, I just cannot thank you all enough for taking the time and, you know, really having me in your community.
Hi, so my question is concerning the time frame. I think you had said, once we were ready to go, you were looking at a 3 to 5 week runway up until the day that was going to be launched with the students. So I'm assuming this, like, let's say if we got through the end of this week, the board approved the policy, you came into the school Thursday and Friday, is what I'm hearing, I think, and did those things with the students. If everything was functioning perfectly, what would you see as a reasonable launch date? Keeping in mind that we have April vacation from the 15th to the 24th.
Sure. And we were looking at those dates in past conversations. So right now, Yonder has a hold on its implementation calendar for the week of April 25th. That, I think the community is pretty aware of Yonder at this point. So as long as everyone is comfortable with the go forward policy, and of course deciding on, you know, do we do the middle school this spring, the week of April 25th, and then look at the high school for the fall, I think that's a very reasonable, really reasonable way for us to kind of prove concept to the board and the school and the students at the middle school level, and then be ready to go for the fall with the high school. But yeah, I mean, after Matt's in the school, we'll be about three weeks out from that date. So I'm very comfortable with that time frame, and we'd be in the school from about April 25th to April 28th. We usually do a 3 to 4 day implementation.
That's not impacted by the fact that, like, the school's not going to be open. I mean, it's April vacation.
No, I think that it's okay that you all are on spring break that week before. I think we'll have everything in line, from policy to communication to the shipment of the products to us hiring the specific staff from New York City that will be coming out to Torrington to support you all. You guys being out for the week before, I don't think is an issue at all. That Monday, the 25th, we take really easy. We consider it a walkthrough day. We're observing arrival, we're observing dismissal, we're walking around the school, we're potentially having department level meetings with the teachers, presenting to them, letting them know what's going to be happening on the ensuing days and everything like that. So as the middle schoolers are kind of getting back into their routine, that's kind of when we're putting everything in place for what's going to, you know, happen the next day. We got to have folding tables out. We might install our bases on rolling carts or in vestibules at the lobby and in the entrances. Those are the kind of things we work out on that first day. So it'll give the community time to kind of have a full day back before the students are actually assigned their pouches.
Are we allowed to ask questions? Matt seems to want to integrate parents and students.
We'll have forums for that, and then you can ask the questions to the honor.
Don't know.
Right now, we're just making
That's
a
fine. Don't know.
policy, so the implementation will be with
Okay,
the,
he just said wants to incorporate families. Or the families.
correct, but we have to, that would be figured out through the administration. So we're just doing the policy. So it doesn't mean that if they can do it by the 25th, it doesn't mean that we'll be in agreement with that. It could be later.
Just that buy-in was a huge part in the success of the policy.
As they stated.
Right.
I would just like to hear about buy-in a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll ask, I mean, I can ask a question. No, just, I'm not gonna engage now. I'm gonna try to answer for them, but they do have forums before we start out with parents, but maybe they can explain that as to how they go about it.
So it doesn't appear to matter at this point, though, so it's fine, we have our answer.
I don't know the answer, but if you want to hear it, I can ask them. They can answer the question for you.
I'd like to hear it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they would, I'm not sure, was it be Graham or would it be Benji? Or even Matt? Could you describe typically the student forum and the parental forum? And how you go through it, what you try to accomplish?
Sure. And Matt will be communicating with the middle school administration to get together a group of student leaders for next week so that he can just sit down with them and talk through Yonder, ask any of their questions, hear their concerns and stuff like that. In addition, we often will present to parents, have a Zoom meeting for all parents, just to give them a comprehensive presentation on what Yonder is and what we do, and what to expect for their middle school children once the implementation occurs. So we have, we can do a 10-minute presentation for all parents in the community. We can let them know about our presence in the Northeast, the tri-state area, and then get into some specifics and FAQs around how Yonder is actually going to look at Torrington Middle School.
Can you schedule that to be like that? Can you do that next week?
Absolutely. We could do it whenever is you guys have something on the calendar. We'll make time.
They will coordinate with the administrators at the school.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I think part of the confusion is the way the procedures work and how things get done, right? So we have not entered into a contract with Yonder, despite what everyone's saying. Our intention is to move in this direction, but none of the other things can be rolled out until we actually have a policy that they can discuss at these different hearings, whether it be with the parents or the students or the staff. They have to know what are the parameters surrounding what the board is looking for. Once we set the policy, then it gets turned over. They're going to work closely with the administration at the building and administration at central office, and then it moves from there. So at this point, they don't know what direction we're going on from a policy standpoint. So what they're communicating to parents is going to be very different depending on what we decide the policy is going to be.
And then, once the policy is drafted, it doesn't mean that that policy is etched in stone. There will be updates on how everything's going, and it might come back to policy committee to tweak.
I mean, I know it may not be the forum for it, but I just want to say on behalf of the administrators, and maybe I'm being ridiculous, they kind of have a lot going on. So scheduling several different meetings for them and rollouts and getting teachers together, we should probably check their calendars.
And that's what the
Kind of a lot.
administrators in central office will be doing. That's not the policy committee. We're just just developing the policy.
Yeah, so my next question, because looking back at my notes, I realized I misunderstood my own notes. So you're not coming to the school this week to talk to students, you're coming to the school next week. Is that correct?
That's correct. Next week, Thursday, Friday.
Awesome information out there.
Yeah.
So then my next question would be, like I I thought I heard you say that you guys had put us on your calendar for that week of the 25th. But what if we are not ready at the week of the 25th?
That's totally fine. We can look at the next couple of weeks in early May. We just did a hold on our calendar so that Torrington gets priority. You know, if we have 5 more New York City schools sign up this week and we can't fit them in the week of the 25th, if we're doing your middle school, we will still hold it for you. But of course, we can be flexible if you want to push it out.
Thank you. Any other questions for the younger folks? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stick around for more fun, or if you have other things to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
I have something I'd like to say before we go
Sure.
to the next page. So I appreciate the administration's comments. When the board started down this journey, the board is responsible for the overall education of the entire school system. We have to look at everything. We can't look at individual items. You know, this is one of many initiatives the board is looking at to turn things around. Another one that maybe people, you know, weren't apprised of is some concerns about the curriculum we're using for reading. And we're going to be investing in $1 million new reading curriculum to kind of look at that deficit. But the reality is we're an alliance district. We are the bottom 33 school systems in the state of Connecticut. COVID has only elevated that issue. And while we don't like to broadcast this, I'm going to read this, and the board has already received this at another meeting, because I think it's important for people to understand. There's behavioral component to cell phones, but there's also the distraction piece of cell phones. And the kids have a tremendous amount of catching up to do due to COVID. When our students returned in the fall of 2021, I'm going to do it both by reading, ELA, and math. The number of students that were proficient, fall of 2021, our 6th grade students had a 38% were proficient. The remainder were not. Winter of 2022, only 43% of our students were proficient. 7th grade, 41% proficient in the fall, 40% proficient in the winter of 2022. 8th grade, 34% of our kids were proficient at grade level, 36% in the winter. 9th grade, 36% proficient in reading, 37% in the winter. 10th grade, 35%, winter 33%. 11th grade, 43% were proficient, the winter only 41%. 12th grade, 24% were proficient at grade level in the fall, 30% now. That is all in ELA. For mathematics, for 6th grade, 30% in the fall, 36% in the winter. 7th grade, 37%, 36%. 8th grade, 30%, winter 38%. 9th grade, 44% in the fall, 47% now. 10th grade, 46% and 50%. 11th grade, 52%, 55%. 12th grade, 48%, 47%. So the board is looking at cell phones as one measure. In no way does the board think that cell phones are the only issue, but they are a large issue. We are also going to be addressing discipline and other items, and we welcome the input from the community on things, but we need to work on this. We can't accept as a school district that 38% of our kids being proficient is something that we should be proud of. So we are going to continue to look for all of these items to improve the educational experience our students are getting, working with the administration to make that happen. You wanted to add anything to that before we move on?
Just to frame it, you know, with your own students, with your own family members, especially the younger ones, that essentially over the last 2 years, this has been their world. This is an extension of their world, right? The cell phone and all of technology. And unfortunately, really, it's been at a cost that our students really have had a very, very difficult time with social emotional, with mental health issues, with really developing communication skills and putting the device down and saying, let's build some communication. Let's have face-to-face discussions. Let's really build some of those interpersonal skills that are not only important when they're in school, but let's face it, when they go out into the work world, they need to be able to have those skills. So this is a way for us to really see if this makes a difference. The cell phones, having this intervention is one piece of the puzzle, and hopefully it will get our students, it will give us a reset. It will get our students back on track, not having a distraction, not feeling like they have to check this at every moment. There's something called FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And so a lot of students, particularly our younger students, I didn't know what FOMO was until recently, obviously. And I think that tendency to check and check and check is not healthy. We need to come back to, let's build relationships with one another amongst our students. And I do think that that will make a difference in terms of the academics. And obviously, we have a long way to go. We are an Alliance district. We want to use those strategies, put those strategies in place to help our students be as successful as possible.
Entertain a motion to go into executive session regarding an attorney-client privileged communication regarding cell phones, inviting in the superintendent. And the assistant superintendent. So, second. Kathy and Jess. At 6:17, all in favor? Oh, and the rest of the board that's here.